tell us about your adventure with British Drum Co. What's your adventure?
It's been an amazing adventure having been an artist, a touring artist, coming to kind of the industry as an endorsee with DW and Zildjian, Vic Firth, Remo, and I got to know Keith over several years, and so one day he came to me with this kind of idea of the business. I was like, wow, yeah, okay, you know, we sorted that out, you know, with Keith and Al and Alan and Stu, and since then, since we started the business, it's been even more of an adventure than I expected it to be, learning how the business works, you know, things that I never expected or knew about as an endorsee even, you know, so it's been great, and it's been interesting to be this side of the fence.
What made you want to actually make the change and the transition from one drum company to another?
Well, with DW I was an endorsee, or endorser, so I played their drums. I represented the company as a drummer with Kasabian. The difference with Keith is someone I've got to know over the years, and someone I've always believed is deeply skilled at what he does. He knows what he's doing. So he came to me with an offer to be part of this company. So I'm a partner in this company. That makes a massive difference. That's what I mean. Now I'm this side of the fence, you know. So.
What kits do you use with Kasabian or with other projects, and why?
So my main Kasabian drum kit that you'll see me touring with, as we are coming back out in March, will be a Legends series kit. It'll be a 24, 13, 16, 18 with a Merlin snare, matching snare, I think 6.5 deep. That's the main sort of thing. Because they're perfect for that sound. You know, I take a drum kit, it's incredible because the drums are made of birch, and I think a lot of drummers have a preconception of how birch behaves, what it sounds like, what it does. Our birch drums, maybe it's because they've come through the handmade process, so the wood has slowly formed itself to shape, has so much meat and so much width to the sound that it defies its birchness. You see what I mean? And a lot of my drummer friends who've heard that kit being played, or one of those kits being played by me, was like, what's that made of? Expecting me to say maple, and I said, well, it's made of birch. And it's kind of floored them, which has made me feel kind of chuffed, you know.
Are there any other kits or instruments that you use in some other context, possibly?
Yeah, I would say when I'm at home, not touring, I do sort of fairly small gigs with friends of mine that I've known for years and years. They tend to be kind of like jazz and funk gigs. They're pretty easy to like pick up because there's no rehearsals. I haven't got enough time to be in another musical project, because by the time you get something going, it's time to go back up with Kasabian. And I don't want to do more touring than I already do. So those kind of little small gigs are kind of perfect. So I tend to take out my Lounge Series kit. Although I did actually, for a while, I did have one of our original Legend kits that I was running around Bristol, where I'm from, with, you know, so.
Drummers tend to have a sort of a fetish for snares. That's a slightly different thing than kits, right? Drummers tend to be fetishists for snares, right? Have you ever fallen victim to that? And using British Drum Co snares, do you also tend to use some other snares, not just the regular?
Yeah, no, I'll be very honest with you. I mean, I've had the vintage bug over the years, and I've got a nice old 1938 Slingline Radio King, a 26, 13, 16 in that lovely yellowed white marine pearl. And I got some 60s, I got 60s Gretsch and a 60s Ludwig and an early 70s Ludwig as well. These are as kits. I've recently got rid of a few drum kits because I've got no room left, and I've got Keith now, you know. The snare drums are interesting. I mean, I've got the usual. I've got my 400 in the 60s. I've got a 60s Acrolite. I've got a 60s Black Beauty. I've got I think a 50s Radio King snare. You know, I've got Heyman. You know, I've collected these snare drums over the years because as I've kind of gone through my career in the recording studios, I've been asked for so many different sounds and colours that you tend to end up buying these snare drums to try and get these different sounds and colours, which is what we're doing here actually at the company. And I guess again, this is part of my role in the company. Is I am the active professional drummer who's touring and recording, so I can kind of like relate what I need and what I'm feeling I need back to Keith, and we can kind of like investigate different shell types and stuff. For instance, our Big Softy is kind of born out of studio, like getting a perfect drum for a studio, and we found it. I mean, you can crank that drum up, play it live, but in the studio it behaves beautifully, especially if you want a lower, more fat sound. So, you know, with our snare drums we've got here, we've got the Big Softy, we've got the Bluebird for that kind of metal brass snare, we've got the Merlin for that kind of wood snare, you know. The lounge snare here is like an 8-lug old school sounding snare drum. So we're kind of going that way with our range, you know, which you have to as a company. So.
Thanks a lot for that.
No problem at all. Dziękuję.
Dziękuję.